Snoochie Boochies! Today on Stack and Mac, we're going to be watching the 1995 Kevin Smith classic Mallrats.
And life lessons from the family film Jumanji. Did you know a little rain never hurt anyone, but a lot can kill you?
Chocolate covered pretzel, anyone? Stay tuned.
Stack and Mac. Stack and Mac. Looking back on movies.
So Adam, what did you think of Mallrats?
I did not hate it. It was one of the first Kevin Smith movies I've seen. And it got better as it got along. I did have some issues with it, but all in all, I liked it.
Okay, so we'll get into the issues as we break it down.
Right.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is writing, screenplay. What did you think of the writing?
You know, the thing that I appreciated about it is that I feel like a lot of the conversations that were had in the script were conversations that either I myself had when I was a teenager or I heard other people have when they were a teenager. And some of the dialogue, like when they were talking about, man, I wish Hollywood would quit making terrible remakes, I was like, same. Like, today, that's still relevant. Hollywood still makes some really poorly made remakes. But I thought the screenplay was pretty good. I did have some issues with some of the way that the story sort of played out. It almost felt like two different types of movies.
Yeah.
Not one full cohesive film from a screenplay perspective.
So the problem that this movie had is that it was severely edited down. Like, they recut the whole thing and had to reshoot a bunch of stuff, and it was just the...
I could tell.
You can tell. But outside of that, I mean, Kevin Smith is just good at writing one-on-one dialogue.
Yes.
Right, two guys or two characters on screen just kind of shooting the shit and talking about pop culture. I think Clerks works better. This is his sophomore film.
Right.
And it bombed terribly.
Yes.
It's just like for you with Clueless. I have a lot of nostalgia for this movie. This was the first Kevin Smith I saw. I think it's the first Kevin Smith film that a lot of people saw.
Right.
Saw it on VHS. My buddy showed it to me. I was like, who is this Jay and Silent Bob? I want to be a drug dealer hanging out at the mall all day.
And they were one of the best parts of the film, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed their interactions with the other characters, and I thought it lifted the film.
Definitely. So the screenplay, it has its issues, but overall, I think casting, it holds up.
I was surprised at how many people were in this movie that I liked. I'm a big Claire Forlani fan.
Okay.
I just really, Meet Joe Black, that she will be in, in the future. I just think she's a very underutilized actress, and I didn't know that she was in this film.
Very British.
So I was pleasantly surprised to see her in that movie. I don't know if she's so much fit with everyone else, as far as I almost think that she's just a different type of actress compared to everyone else in the film.
So she was originally, Joey Adams was actually cast to play Tia.
See, I love Joey Adams also. 90s Joey Adams represents the 90s to me.
Yeah.
I think she's great.
She works really well. She was in Dazed and Confused, and across from Jason London,
right.
Jeremy London's brother, who Jeremy's in this. Anyway, so really well cast. I am a huge fan of one pro skateboarder, Jason Lee. You not so much. You didn't like Jason Lee.
I like Jason Lee as an actor. The thing of it is he was just loud. There was no depth to his character. Everything he said was just loud. And I mean, even if he's like, can I have that? I mean, it got to the point where it's kind of like, at the end of the movie, I didn't care about him. I thought he was obnoxious. The fact that Shannen Doherty's character ended up with him in the end, I think was a setback for women. Because he was awful to her. Terrible to her. Even at the end of the movie, he was terrible to her. And I just don't think that it was,
Is it the lesser of two evils? Do you want her to end up with Brody, or do you want...
No, she should have ended up alone and say, I'm too good to deal with either of you. You're a man-child. You're an awful person. I'm too good. I'm going to stand up for myself. I think that Kevin Smith did not take the moment in that to say, she's too good.
You also have to think that Kevin Smith is also writing a fantasy for all those lovable slackers out there who are like, if they just got to know me, they'll end up with me and they'll stick with me.
Yeah, we got to know him, and I still don't think anybody should, he still was horrible. He was a horrible character.
Yeah, looking back on it, he doesn't hold up as well. And I will say overall, the movie for me doesn't stand up to what I thought it was. I will say this: I went into this week saying I'm gonna love Mallrats, it's gonna hold up. Jumanji, not so much, and I ended up coming out on the other side thinking, completely differently. Yeah. I still love Clerks. I end up watching that movie probably at least once a year. Right. It's just such a great, tight little film, and I'll say that Chasing Amy and Clerks for me hold up a lot better than Mallrats. The soundtrack is awesome. You couldn't get a more 90s rock soundtrack.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, definitely.
Weezer, Bush, a whole bunch of other one-hit wonders on there. Like, if you're going to have a soundtrack, just one-hit wonders.
And I think the nostalgia factor of Mallrats comes within the soundtrack. It comes with the costuming. It comes with all the things that are just so 90s-esque is in that film. But I also think that the way that it's constructed is very 90s. Like the way that it starts with the, kind of alternative, pop song at the beginning of it. A lot of 90s movies do that. And so I think that the soundtrack really lends itself to the popularity of this film.
What did you think of Stan Lee randomly showing up?
Well, I thought that was a pleasant surprise when the opening the credits rolled. I was like, man, Stan Lee's in this movie. How exciting to see Stan Lee,
a young
Stan Lee in this film. And I thought he was utilized pretty well. I think that, anytime you use Stan Lee, he's utilized pretty well in a film, just because of the excitement factor, that fanboy, sort of comic book, everybody loves to see Stan Lee in a film. But I was pleasantly surprised by that. I have to say one of my favorite was Ethan Suplee, who I feel like is a very underutilized actor. Even him staring at that picture in the mall. The funniest parts of the whole entire movie was every time someone would come up and they would see that sailboat and he couldn't see it. I mean, just small humor outweighed the more expected humor of the film for me.
Just like Clueless, a lot of mall, but also a lot of great quotes, a lot of fun dialogue. You got the Snoochie Boochies, you got the chocolate covered pretzel, you got the stink palm. Kevin Smith really was trying to build this as this is the next teen comedy. People quote it all the time. It just didn't work.
And it wasn't. No, it's not the next great teen comedy. That's for sure.
So, does it work for you in 2020?
I think that it is a decent film. But as far as does it work in 2020, I think if you watch it in 1995, it definitely works. But I think that if you watch it in 2020, I think that some of the tropes, you can look at that film and see how far we've come and how we relate to one another as human beings. And I think that it doesn't hold up in that vein. As in the opening comic book thing, all the women are displayed as over-sexualized, and the men are buttoned up and stuff. And I just don't think that works, but I think that in 1995 it would work. In 2020, I don't think that it does work as well.
Not at all. It is not a Me Too movie.
No.
And whatsoever. And then even then watching, big nerd, so I rewatched the commentary, and listening to those guys talk during the commentary, I was like, ugh, it's kind of cringeworthy stuff that they're saying. Appreciate the movie. It played a huge part in my childhood, just like the next movie we're talking about. But again, it was nice to go back, but I don't see myself rewatching this movie.
No, I don't think I'll ever rewatch it either.
And the next one. So, 1995, Robin Williams.
Jumanji. The thing about Jumanji is that I had just watched... and done research on the new ones that just came out and stuff, and this one's completely different, and it started this whole vein of turning board games into a film. Even though it wasn't a board game, really, it was based on a story, but I was surprised at how funny it was. I don't remember it being this funny. As I watch it, I guess as an adult, it's the humor holds up for me, as well as the excitement in it.
The big thing that I noticed is it's 100 minutes long. It is the perfect length for a movie. I'm watching a movie, and before I know it, the credits are rolling, and I didn't see myself looking at the clock or looking at my phone or wondering, I wasn't off in the oblivion thinking about other things. I was honed in on this movie. It kept me captivated, and I thought
it's very engaging.
It's a tight film.
It's a very tight film, and I don't think it lacks. I don't think it lulls. I don't think that there's a moment where you think to yourself, where it was like, oh gosh, it's dead. There's no dead time in that film. Even when you take away from the main characters and get to like David Alan Grier and B.B. Newirth, I mean, they're wonderful in that film. I mean, every time something happens to Carl Bentley's car, it's just funny. Oh, man. It's just funny. Like, he just, you know, when the monkeys shoot the windows out, or when the vines take it away, it's just funny. Even when he backs it up out of the Save-A-Lot, and he's got stuffed animals in the back of it that like have just sort of like compiled from where it ran into the Save-A-Lot. Little things like that take away from the main story of what's going on is engaging and interesting to watch.
There were 3 things that really stood out to me. My fear of those mosquitoes when I was 8 or 9, when I first saw those, I'm still terrified by them. You know, even though the CG is dated, but again, for the time.
Oh,
it looked
yes,
awesome.
Yeah, it really does. Especially the vines, those flowers opening out,
it looked really
and
good.
stuff. In the way that one thing I didn't notice when I first saw it was when they're pulling Peter when he's caught by it, and it's that wide shot of they show the CGI and them pulling away. I feel like that was one of the first times you sort of see it together in a film that I remember.
Okay.
You know, normally when you think of like I guess late '80s CGI films, they show the CGI, but the actors are separate from it and stuff. And this is the first time I didn't even realize that like you see it both together. And I think that it really holds up in a way of this is the start of them using CGI to create really great family entertainment. Okay. Even though it is a little violent. It's a little violent.
Number 2, the animatronic spiders were not as scary as I remember them being, and
no, I still can't watch. I kind of watched it.
They're like the legs. You can just tell it's a robot, you know.
Yeah, and it's hard, for someone that's afraid of spiders to watch it because it's integral to what's going on at the very end of the movie.
It is.
Like she has to put the dice in her mouth to roll it out, and the spiders are coming after her. And one of the funniest parts of the movie is Robin Williams when he's stuck in the floor and he like has to, he's like,
yeah, that's pretty funny.
Trying to blow the spider away. Like it's funny, but they're still creepy. I mean, they're giant. They're giant spiders.
I remember watching a special effects show when they were showing the kind of the puppeteers and everything, and it kind of took me out of it. So every time I see those spiders now, I'm like, they're just That's how I protect myself from my fear of spiders. Like, it's just a robot.
Just robot.
3, Van Pelt. This went right over my head when I was watching this as like a 10-year-old, but it's his dad.
Yeah, you didn't realize that?
I didn't. When watching it, I'm like, it's the fear of his father. That's why Van Pelt's after him. He's trying to man himself up. I was
Full disclosure, I watch this movie once a year. It is a movie that I religiously once a year put in and watch it. I love it so much. But it is interesting sort of to take it that other layer of this kid was afraid of his dad before he got sucked into the board game, and to use Van Pelt as a representation of him being afraid of his dad. Coming after. That's how I looked into it, at least.
Well, the thing is, when he first says Van Pelt, and that realization, it's Robin Williams being a much better character actor than people have probably given credit for, and him saying, like, I'm scared of this character, but you also see the fear of his father.
Right, yes.
In that moment.
Right.
Great casting. We haven't even touched on
that. Wonderful casting. Bonnie Hunt is so funny in this movie. Every time she has one of those like sarcastic one-liners, or they get into an argument, or when she's on the phone with her therapist, she's just funny in this movie. And Kirsten Dunst is one of my favorite actresses of all time.
Crushed it. Virgin Diaries. What is
the Virgin Suicides?
Virgin Suicides, yeah.
Yeah, and even like the smaller parts, you got Patricia Clarkson that plays his mom at the beginning, who's a fabulous actress. And then the girl that plays Sarah is actually Laura Bell Bundy. I looked this up, who was the original Elle Woods on Legally Blonde and Broadway, and now does like television and things like that. Fabulous actress, but she looks so different from 1995, obviously, to 10, 15 years later and stuff. But great cast.
Not much of a soundtrack, but those drums in the background work. Yeah, it works.
Yeah, totally works.
And the fact that it's like the kids that hear it.
Yes.
It's always the kids that are hearing it. I never picked up on that either, watching it for the first time. So, overall, it's really well written. It holds up in terms of, for the most part, the special effects. and didn't know who had directed it, but it was Joe Johnson.
Yeah.
And he had won a bunch of special effects awards. I mean, he won an Oscar for Raiders.
Yeah.
And he worked on all these Star Wars films.
Right, yeah.
Like the good ones. And so there you go. Great film. It holds up. So for this week, Mallrats. Yay.
Yeah. It's not a bad movie if you watch it as if you're in 1995.
Jumanji.
Wonderful.
You can watch this with your kids 25 years from now.
Yeah.
30 years from now.
I definitely think so. I think in another 25 years, people will still be watching the original Jumanji film.
So that is the quick down and dirty on Mallrats and Jumanji. Next week, actually in 2 weeks, we've got 2 more movies.
Yes, 2 more family movies. Casper with Bill Pullman and Christina Ricci, and a Goofy movie.
Love a Goofy movie.
Everybody loves a Goofy movie.
All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks. I need to stand up straighter, otherwise I'll slide.
So that's it for this week. Coming up in 2 weeks, another episode, and we will be watching. What will we be watching?
Casper and a Goofy movie.
Is it Casper and a Goofy movie?
Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to look and see. We might need to refilm that.